going on, everyone? This is the King's Court, another edition. We have plenty of things to talk about. It was a really exciting weekend this past weekend, and I'll introduce you to two of my buddies here. First off, Jose. To the right, Jose, how you doing?
Doing well.
And Cody, how are you doing today?
Doing all right, thanks.
Yeah, well, we had a really good weekend for racing fans, people in the business. It doesn't matter if you're a fan, a horse player, a person in the business. It's just good racing, and we all enjoyed it. And we'll start off with what everyone's talking about, California Chrome, and how dominant he was in the Pacific Classic. And Jose, did that catch you by surprise a little bit? Because coming into this race, everybody was expecting this amazing race between three superstars, California Chrome, also Beholder and Dortmund, and at the end of the day, it was a one-horse race as soon as the gates opened.
Yeah, it caught me by surprise a little bit, but you can't really be too surprised when you see the setup of the race. I mean, he just gets a very easy lead, goes off by himself. Both Beholder and Dortmund elect to sit off, and when you give a horse like that kind of lead, he's just going to take off at the top of the stretch. He just had everything his own way the whole time, and, a great horse like that's going to do something like that.
And Cody, we talked about it after the race a little bit over text message, that California Chrome, like Jose said, really just got it all his own way. But at the same time, he flew around the track. He looked awesome. Didn't look like Victor asked him to run much. I mean, it looked like he had so much more left in the tank. And we know California Chrome's versatile. He's been able to sit off a leader and run right by. So you have to imagine that this horse is just getting better and better.
Oh, exactly. He's definitely the one to beat right now, I think, in the older horse division. He ran a massive race. He got to the lead. They didn't really pressure him. I thought Rafael Bejarano and Dortmund's hands would be forced to probably do what they did last race and stick with him and make him work the entire way around. But he got a good setup, and he ran a hell of a race again. So I think he's definitely head and shoulders above everybody on the West Coast right now. He proved that, beating Beholder, who I took a shot with in the race. I thought she could rebound and maybe run a better race, and she did. She beat Dortmund, and that counts for something. But hopefully she can be a little bit more tuned up for the rest of the year and improve from there. But Chrome's definitely, he ran a hell of a race.
And speaking of Dortmund, we'll go to him just really quickly. Cody, do you think that this horse can run the classic distance and he was just outclassed by the top two, or do you think he might be better at a mile, mile and an eighth?
I think he's better probably at around a mile and an eighth. I think mile and a quarter is a little bit too long for him, especially with what they're going to have to do to probably beat Chrome, because you're going to have to pressure him or make him uncomfortable. And with Dortmund, he's got that tactical speed to be either on or near the lead going a mile and a quarter. And in the Derby, he got tired. I think going a mile and a quarter again, he'll fight all he can, but I think he'll get a little bit tired late there.
And Jose, let's talk a little bit about Frosted. You're an East Coast guy. You followed Frosted since his very first start. I think we all did, just looking at his breeding. Outstanding breeding, of course. But Frosted is another one that with age he has gotten better. And this year in 2016, the light bulb all of a sudden just turned on for Frosted. And where do you see Frosted and Chrome, and how would you compare them in terms of the talent level that they're both at right now?
I think they're both at a extremely high talent level right now. Both are as good as they've ever been. The only thing is, I think Frosted's better at the mile, and I think California Chrome's going to be better suited for the mile and a quarter. But that doesn't mean that I don't think Frosted will be able to handle it. I just think he's a super horse at a mile and something that no one's going to be able to beat when he runs a mile. I'll be interested to see them match up, though. I think Frosted will probably pressure him. He's got enough speed to go with Chrome, and it'll be a really interesting race when they get to run with each other. But I think California Chrome can carry it a little further.
And so, Jose, you're saying here that if he ran in the Pacific Classic Frosted, you think he would have at least finished second?
Yeah.
And Cody, do you tend to agree with that analysis all the way around?
I think he would have made the race really interesting, and he probably would have been the one to – he'd probably been the main upsetter, I think, because Dortmund, I thought, would get that trip, and I don't think Dortmund would have held in there as long as Frosted would, just like Frosted did to American Pharoah, but I definitely think he would have made that race really interesting tactically.
Do you sort of tend to agree with Jose that maybe Frosted's better going a mile? That's probably his very, very best distance, and Crow might be better going a little bit further?
Yeah, I think Frosted's going to be better, probably going a mile and eighth as well. But he showed that he can really cruise around there at a high speed and hold on to it going a mile and an eighth in his last race. So we'll see about a mile and a quarter. I would assume that he'd get pretty tired late, and a horse like Chrome could take advantage of that, depending on how they're drawn in the race and how everything sets up tactically. But they're definitely the two to beat in the division. After that, you got to basically go with the 3-year-olds or Songbird.
That's right. I tend to agree with you on that, Cody. And obviously, Frosted and Chrome are both very talented horses. They may have different strengths, but they are both extremely talented. So, another one that's talented is Beholder, and she did not lose any admirers by finishing second this year to Chrome in the Pacific Classic. She ran so well last year in the Pacific Classic, but this year she couldn't quite produce that same effort. Still a very good effort nonetheless, though, this year. And Jose, we'll start with you on this one. Where do you think Beholder should go next? Mandela's sort of leaning towards the Zenyatta Stakes against fillies and mares. In fact, we know he's going to go there, but then the question will become, will he try her again against males, against Chrome again in the Breeders' Cup Classic, or do you think that they'll go with the Breeders' Cup Distaff? What do you think?
They haven't won a Breeders' Cup since 2013 with her, I believe. I think they've missed the last two. So I think that they'll go to the Distaff and just try to win a Breeders' Cup with her before they're done.
And you tend to agree with that move if they were to make that move? Do you think that's a smart move at this point?
Yeah, I do.
Cody, what do you think?
I think if Mandela got her to the point that he was comfortable enough to run her in the Classic and wanted to take that risk, I would be all aboard. Because I think she ran a respectable race, especially how the race set up. She hung in there for a second, and I think if someone had aided her and helped, pressure Chrome, she would have been a lot more effective. And I think that Mandela could probably still crank her up a few more notches to really get her where he wants her by the end of the year. I wouldn't disagree if they went in the distaff either. I mean, she'd win the distaff, I think, without a doubt. Even though she just lost to Stellar Wind, I would take her round two. So I wouldn't hate on either move.
And Cody, do you so you're saying that you think that Beholder may still be the same mare as we saw last year, and that there's still a possibility in your mind that Mandela could have a few more gears left to crank out with her?
I'm hopeful. I mean, we'll see in the next race or so how they feel about her and how she runs, honestly. So, because isn't Stellar Wind going to probably be in the next one too?
She will, yeah.
So we'll see if she can turn the tables there, and if he thinks he's got her to a comfortable enough place to run her in the Classic, I wouldn't hate on it.
Jose, do you think that Beholder's lost the step, or are you hopeful like Cody?
I'd like to think that she hasn't, but so far I kind of do. But I'm hopeful that, she'll be able to show up in her next race and run something huge, bigger than her window 6 she just ran last time, and keep heading, forward. It'd be nice to see all of them come up into the Classic at their peak condition, and we'd have a hell of a race on our hands.
It sure would be, and the Zenyatta is going to tell us a lot going back against Stellar Wind now. If those two end up making it to that race, we'll be able to see exactly how they fare against one another now. Second time out, both of those two will be able to tell who's better at this point, and if Beholder has lost a step or if she's still the same mare and she's got a little left in the tank. Well, at one point, Beholder seemed unbeatable, and Songbird is unbeatable at this point anyway in terms of facing 3-year-old fillies, it appears. But she was very, very impressive again in the Alabama this past weekend. And Jose, I know you like Karina Mia. You still think she has a chance to beat Songbird. But first, we'll ask you what you thought of Songbird. She had pressure up front and she shook it off again, just like she did in the Coaching Club American Oaks when Karina Mia took a run at her.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, Karina Mia gave her all she wanted in her last race, and she battled through it nicely. I think that in order for her to lose in the future, that someone's going to have to really try her like Karina Mia did. We're going to have to wait and see who she faces or where she goes next. It sounds like the Cotillion is going to be next, which that track will really help her as far as being speedy. So I think she's definitely head and shoulders above all the other fillies, and she'd need a scenario to be able to win.
Jose, why don't you chime in?
I agree. She's going to need a scenario to get beat, and she's going to need a better horse than what she's faced while she's been on the East Coast to run her down. she's gotten run at, but there's been nothing that's anywhere near good enough to attempt to run her down. I think when you get that kind of horse, maybe Catherine Sophia, if someone goes at her next time in the cotillion and Catherine Sophia's in there, I think she's the kind of horse that would be able to run her down late. But she's not faced anything that's good enough to run her down on the East Coast.
And Catherine Sophia, guys, we remember how impressive she was in the Kentucky Oaks. And Jose, I can totally see where if she puts up an effort like the Kentucky Oaks, she must face Songbird and give an A++ effort to be able to run her down. But you're saying if she gives an effort like the Kentucky Oaks, there's a shot, especially if Songbird gets pressure up front, then maybe Catherine Sophia can tag her late.
Yeah, if she was in that race, the one that Karina Mia ran at her the whole way around, and she was at her best that day and she was in that race, I think she would have ran her down that day.
What do you think about that, Cody?
I won't disagree. I think they were both very tired at the end, and the other horses they beat were, was really not outclassed and didn't run a really good race either. But I mean, when you get a pace like that with Karina Mia trying her as early as she did into the turn, like Broom making the movie Made, it's definitely vulnerable for a horse to come skip them up late. And I think they definitely staggered home. And in the future, if she draws another inside post and a horse goes with her the entire time, it's definitely possible she could be beat. But if she's drawn the outside like she did last time, she's going to gallop every time against the quality filly she's running against right now.
Now, at Saratoga, we know it's a tiring track, and we saw that Songbird ran 1.25 miles in 2 minutes and 3 seconds, which is not that fast, but us horse people know that times don't mean anything sometimes. It doesn't mean everything, I should say. It's not that it doesn't mean anything, but it does not mean everything. And Jose, you're a New York guy, so you know that Saratoga's a tiring track, and with a place like Santa Anita, it's a little more quicker. They look like they're just going quicker. Would you not really worry about the time? And even though you could see that she was working to get to the wire, and even though it was a slow time, the track's still tiring. So would you say that the time isn't a concern in terms of whether Songbird might be best at going 1.25 miles?
She probably isn't best going 1.25 miles. And, I mean, like you said, it's a deep track. You don't really want to put too much into the time. It's not a terrible time over that deep of a track. But, it wouldn't make much sense for her. The longer to go, the better she'd be. You'd probably, she's got all in at about 1.8 miles, and then after that, she's just good enough to carry it on. But 1.25 miles is probably not her best distance that she can run.
And, Cody, what would you have to add to that, if anything?
If they shortened her up, she'd probably be more effective, but she's good enough to 1.25 miles. She's still head and shoulders above the 3-year-old filly division.
And Jerry Hollendorfer said that this might be the best runner he has ever trained, and that says a lot considering he trained runners like Blind Luck and Shared Belief, and Shared Belief was exceptional, but if he thinks this filly here is better than Shared Belief, that says something.
Exactly, that says a lot.
So we'll see how good she really is, and the cotillion will be really interesting, and it'll tell us where Songbird's at, where Karina Mia is at, or rather, Catherine Sophia is at, and we'll maybe get to see a showdown later in the year between Songbird and Beholder. If Beholder runs in the distaff, we know Songbird's going to run in the distaff, but she's been very, very good, of course. She hasn't done anything wrong in her career so far. Saratoga, the Graveyard of Champions, not for Songbird, but it was the Graveyard of Champions for Catch a Glimpse. She lost her very first race, and it was an upset by the second choice, but nonetheless it was an upset. And Jose, she finally got tagged, but she ran a really good race anyway.
Yeah, she stuck in there, after she got passed. She wasn't trying to lose the race. She's just a filly with a lot of heart. But Time and Motion's a very, very, very nice filly in her own respects, and probably not very far off Catch a Glimpse, and probably is the one that's improving out of the two as well. So, I wasn't necessarily surprised. I thought Time and Motion could catch her before, and she ran a huge race in the Belmont Oaks as well. So I think Time and Motion's heading the right way. Catch a Glimpse maybe not heading the right way, but very, very gutsy filly.
Sure, she just runs her heart out every single race, Catch a Glimpse. And Cody, what was even more impressive was Catch a Glimpse has run so well on a track that's a little wet, a turf course that's a little wet. It was a little wet last weekend, and she still got run down. So Time in Motion is really a filly to be reckoned with moving into the fall.
Exactly. I think Time in Motion's a really nice filly. I've used her to beat her in her last race in the Belmont Oaks, and sure enough, Catch a Glimpse got the job done there. But Jimmy Toner's done a really good job with her, and she definitely took a step forward and ran a big race in order to beat her last time. So I think going forward, she's definitely going to be one to hear from. And I think Catch a Glimpse, she was a game filly. She battled in there, ran a good race. I've always thought she was vulnerable in her last 2 races. In the Penn Mile, I tried to beat her, and she won again. So third time's the charm, and she lost last time. And Time in Motion, she proved her worth.
And one thing that's really interesting moving forward, looking at the Breeders' Cup in the fall, there's not a 3-year-old filly turf race, so Catch a Glimpse will have to run against older. Presumably, she's going to run in the filly and mare turf, I would say, unless maybe the Breeders' Cup Mile against boys. If Chad Brown wants to separate Lady Eli and Catch a Glimpse, I'm not sure what those plans are. But it would appear at this point that Catch a Glimpse will run in the filly and mare turf against older, and that's going to be even tougher once she runs against those types, you'd think, Jose, just because now she's going to have to face Europeans and face older runners.
Yeah, I don't know what she would do in something like that. Like I said, she's kind of been running all year as well. I mean, there was a little break from the Breeders' Cup to Gulfstream, but she's had a pretty solid campaign, and she had a solid 2-year-old campaign. I'm not sure she'll be at her top condition when that time of the year rolls around anyway. She'd probably be something I laid off of.
And Cody,
she'll probably win the though still. How far is the QE2? Is it a mile? Mile and 16th, mile and 8th?
I think
mile and an eighth.
Mile and an eighth.
It's a mile and an eighth. Time in Motion would probably come over for her to be a good race, but I feel like that track would fit her with those tight turns, and she won the Breeders' Cup over pretty nicely. Mm-hmm. So she'd probably take money because she'd probably win a race like the QE2, and then I'd probably be off of her in the Breeders' Cup.
And Cody, what do you have to say about her moving forward?
I would mainly try and find straight 3-year-old grass races for fillies going forward with her. Take those whenever you can get them. And maybe try her against older once if she runs bad, which I think she's headed towards a downturn if she's going to face against older. I think those are going to be too overwhelming for her. But if she runs bad, I say you just shelve her and return her to some softer spots here in the upcoming months at like Gulfstream in the winter, places like that. I think she'd be a good fit over there.
Yeah.
You're
looking at the future winner. Is the Endeavor the Phillies one?
You guys know more than me about Gulfstream.
That's a little Tampa for you.
Tampa? So you think she's the future star at Tampa Bay Downs?
Oh, yeah. She'll run in the same races that Tevin ran in last year.
Well, you know that Chad Brown's probably will try to separate Lady Eli and Catch a Glimpse, especially come next year if they're both still in training. Say that again?
You mean Tepin and Catch?
Tepin and
Yeah.
Tepin and Catch a Glimpse.
Yeah, Lady Eli's the whole new can of worms.
She's in Chad Brown's barn. Yeah, she's pretty sensational. We'll see how she comes back, but yeah, Tepin and Catch a Glimpse will probably be separated. But it'll be interesting. Do either of you two know if Mark Cassie's looking at the Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf with her, or if he might, like you guys talked about, just keep her in restricted races and then try the Breeders' Cup next year?
I'm sure he'll want to try the Breeders' Cup. I'm sure his owner's going to try the Breeders' Cup. I mean, she's only lost one time. She's won every big grade 1 3-year-old filly division. The QE2, that's a straight 3-year-old filly, so I'm sure that's where they'll go. I mean, there's no point in going to the Flower Bowl. Although I could definitely see Time in Motion going to the Flower Bowl because they run that one at 1.25 miles.
And maybe Time in Motion will end up being the better runner then.
They're going to want to try the filly and mare turf. They're not going to run her in the mile because she'll just get her lunch eaten by Tepin, but they'll probably want to try her in that race.
Right. And now that now you guys corrected me on the whole barn situation there, it would make a lot of sense that Tepin runs back in the Breeders' Cup Mile and Catch a Glimpse runs in the farther race to separate. So that probably would make a lot more sense. And would you guys say that maybe Time in Motion in the long term may become a better runner than Catch a Glimpse?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say so.
Well, Graham Motion, he really knows how to get them ready and cranked up and really develop them. And this is another situation here, Time in Motion, where she's really coming into her own now, and she looks great. She couldn't be doing any better. And she beat an undefeated filly, and that is never easy to do. Well, winning the Travers won't be easy. That's this weekend. It's going to be a sensational card at Saratoga. I think we've got 6 or 7 stakes races on the card. It's going to look like a Breeders' Cup type card with all the superstars there. But the main attraction, of course, is the Travers for 3-year-olds. We're expecting a full field. And Cody, I know you've got a horse you like from the Chad Brown stable.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, outside of the main horses, Exaggerator, I like a horse named Connect for Chad Brown. He won the Kerwin Stakes last time out. And, I think it was a little bit of an upset. I think Giftbox was the more highly regarded one. But he ran a big race. He battled in there on the turn, and he ended up wiring the race. And I think he's definitely improving, and I think he might be one to hear from in the Travers, maybe at a little bit of a price.
So Cody thinks that Collect is the top choice out of the 3 Chad Brown contenders. Jose, who would you like to talk about in the Travers to maybe have the viewers keep an eye on?
Yeah, at a little bit of a price, I'd probably look at Governor Malibu. It's a horse that's had a tough trip in his last 2 starts, including the Beaumont and the Jim Dandy, and I think you'll be able to catch him at a little bit of a price. I'm not a big fan of what a lot of the horses that were running big in the Triple Crown races have done after. So he's kind of a horse that looks like he's heading the right way. He looked like he was heading the right way into the Belmont. Ran big in the Belmont. Got his lane taken at a crucial time. Shows back up in the Jim Dandy. Gets his lane taken at a crucial time again. But still runs a big second. I think he's the kind of horse that will appreciate the mountain quarter distance as well. I actually have no doubt about that.
So Jose says to keep an eye on Governor Malibu. Cody on Collect. Both will be prices. Bob Baffert's got 2 running in this race. He's sending both American Freedom and Arrogate. One thing that's interesting is Rafael Bejarano has ridden both runners. He chooses to stick with American Freedom, who ran very well in the Haskell after being up close to the pace, getting pressure, and was run down late by Exaggerator, who we know both loves the mud and loves a pace to run into. He got both of those things in the Haskell. But maybe we can expect a little bit of a price on Arrogate. But Jose, I know that you're going to lean towards a couple other contenders.
Yeah, like I said, Governor Malibu would probably be my price. I'm not a big fan of what much is done going into this race, so I'm going to have to take a while to look at it. But just off the top of my head real quick, Governor Malibu is probably my price.
And Cody, it's going to be a tough race to figure out, but surely it will be really competitive, and it'll tell us a lot about where all the 3-year-olds stand.
Exactly. I'd probably take Connect as my price. I think he'll probably be around, 10 to 1, 15 to 1. And I think American Freedom as a main player could be another one that makes a step forward to be involved.
So you like American Freedom going into this race?
Yeah, I think he ran a good race last time, and he'd definitely be another one I'm interested in.
It's going to be a terrific race, and we'll know exactly where the 3-year-olds are after this race. Nyquist, it'll be interesting to see how he does when he comes back, but at this point he's on the sidelines for a little while. So it's going to be a great weekend at Saratoga. We encourage everyone to tune in and see how the Travers goes in the other stakes races. So next week we'll be able to recap some of those stakes races, and the fun's just getting started now. We're starting to think about the Breeders' Cup a little more after all these big races at Del Mar and Saratoga are coming to a conclusion. We get to know where the horses are, how they're doing, how some are improving, how some may be regressing, and this is when the fun starts. So it's going to be a great weekend at Saratoga. From Jose, Cody, and myself, Matt, we'll see you next time on the King's Court. Good night.
Good night.